Ryan, you good? Good evening. We'll call to order this meeting of the Valley Center Planning and Zoning Board for December 21st. Before we get started, I might just ask that anybody who's here, if you hadn't had a chance to sign in or you came in, please do so they know everybody's who's here. For all those who are willing and able, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A roll call, please. Here.
Paul Strader.
Here.
Steve Conway. Greg Shelton.
Here.
Joe Burger.
Here.
Scott Phillips.
Here.
Walter Wilson.
Here. Assuming everyone's had a chance to look at tonight's agenda, are there any questions, comments? If not, I'll make a motion we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approval of the draft minutes of the October 25th meeting. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll make a motion we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ryan, any communications? Okay, we'll start with our public. We have two public hearings tonight. We'll start with the first one is a review of SD 2023-02, application of Steve Conway pursuant to City Code 1604, who's petitioning for approval of final replat for land located north of the intersection 61st Street and Fairfield Avenue in Valley Center. Let you have at it, Ryan. As Steve Conway is a member of our board, he will be abstaining from the vote.
Yes, that is correct. So Steve will participate. If there are any questions as the applicant, will participate in the public hearing. But when it comes time to the vote, he will abstain. So again, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for being here so close to the Christmas holiday. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedules to attend tonight's board meeting. This replat will take two portions of existing platted property and replat it into a single parcel, roughly 5 acres in size. Again, the applicant is Mr. Steve Conway. The staff report does include further documentation, the replatting documents, which are done by BHC. I will note that with us this evening, we also have Matt Tucker with BHC to answer any engineering or more technical questions regarding this replat. But this replat will again create one lot north of 61st Street, running from the river to the east. This has been reviewed by the city staff review team, and the city does recommend approval of this replat. You will see, along with the platting documents themselves, there are some additional easements and restrictive covenants to cover the northern two lots, the remaining portions of the two northern lots. That area right now will be a landlocked property, but will have access to a publicly dedicated street via 63rd Street, 63rd Street. And then before anything could be done on those two lots, they will need to be platted as well. And so that covers the remainder of those two lots on the northern side of this new Block A, Lot 1. But again, the city does recommend approval. The appropriate public notices were published in the newspaper and sent to surrounding property owners. Did receive a couple of inquiries, mainly as to what is a replat and what Steve's plan is for the property. Mr. Conway does intend to sell this new lot once the platting process is completed to somebody else to build a single family home. This property is zone RR1, which is our suburban residential district. And so on this lot, there could be one single family home per existing zoning code. Received no protests or anyone stating that they were against this replatting application. I will stand for any questions as well as Steve and Matt.
Thank you, Ryan. 7:04, I think we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there any questions or comments from the board? Would the applicant or the agent for the applicant like to say anything? Matt, since you're here.
Matt Tucker with BHC, 433 South Hydraulic, Wichita. Ryan pretty much summed up the project. There's no intended changes of use or development that would be adverse for the area. So I'll stand for any questions, but I think it's pretty well summarized.
Thank you. Anybody in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Seeing none at 7:05, we'll close the public hearing. Any comments from the board?
On this one.
Seeing none, I'll make a motion based on the city staff recommendations, public comments, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board, and make a motion to approve SD 2023-02.
And I'll second.
Multiple seconds. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Oh, sorry. We have one abstention. Yes. Motion carries. We have the one abstention. Yes. Thank you. I already forgot about that, Ron. Next item is review of SU 2023-01, application of David Leaker, Leaker Real Estate Partnership LP, and Stephen and Cheryl Simon pursuant to City Code 1711, who are petitioning for approval of a special use application, which is commercial development of natural resources and extraction of raw materials for land located southeast of the intersection of Ridge Road and 85th Street in Valley Center. I'll mention this so everybody knows, and I think most of you have been here and know how this works. Ryan is going to go through a list of things related to this item, this special use permit request. We'll hear from the applicant after that, and then when we open up the public hearing, anybody who's here would like to speak on the item will have 3 minutes to do so. I'll come back to those rules in just a couple of minutes, but I wanted to let you know how this is going to work. So Ryan, we'll let you start off.
Thank you. Again, this is for property in between 85th and 77th Street on the east side of Ridge Road. The applicant is requesting approval of a special use application. This is for, per the city zoning code, for A1 or agriculturally zoned property. A special use which is allowed is a commercial development of natural resources and extraction of raw materials. In the staff report, it goes through a number of items, and I did want to highlight some of those tonight. Again, the applicant is planning on a sand pit to be completed to be divided into two phases. First phase being done in approximately 10 to 15 years, and the second phase in approximately 15 years. This will largely be driven by demand, local demand and regional demand for sand in the construction and related industries. I would note that along with the staff report that was in the agenda packet, since that agenda packet was sent out, there have been a number of other protests and other items that have been submitted to my office. You have received all of those either via email or in person tonight, on paper copies on the counter tonight. So I did want to ensure everyone in the audience that everything that has been submitted since the staff report and the agenda packet was published, that has been transmitted to each of you, members of the Planning and Zoning Board. Would like to just take a few minutes to highlight under number 12. If you want to turn to that part of the staff report. These are some of the major issues that have been brought to the city's attention and really, I believe, encapsulate the concerns that the surrounding property owners have. All valid points, of course. And so I'm going to go through each one of these and just as part of, just to emphasize in the staff report why the city is recommending approval of the special use application tonight. So these have been broken into traffic, noise and dust, groundwater contamination, and a decline in property values. So I'm going to go through each of these if you will bear with me. For traffic, as shown in the site plan that Baughman put together, there will be a turning or a deceleration lane added south of the entrance of the sand pit operation along Ridge Road. This turning lane will help with the increased truck traffic on Ridge Road. With only one entrance to the sand pit operation, which will be on Ridge, there should be no increased traffic on 77th and 63rd. Based on the routes used by the trucks, traffic may increase on 85th Street, but there will be no access to the sand pit operation off of this street. I would also like to note that was an item that was given to you this evening is we did acquire additional data regarding traffic in this area. So this is the Ridge Road Traffic and Accident Data Report. So this information comes to us courtesy of the Sedgwick County Public Works Department as well as the Sheriff's Office. So thank you to them for providing us with this data. What you have before you are the average daily traffic counts. This is broken into two sections. So the first section is between 77th and 85th Street, which will again be immediately west and be at the entrance of the proposed sand pit operation. Again, as stated in Baughman's report, the potential traffic, daily truck traffic, is between 150 and 200 trucks a day. The average daily traffic count, and this is from 2022, again, for the section of Ridge Road between 77th and 85th is 3,862. So if you take that into consideration, as shown here, you're looking at between a 3.8 and 5% potential increase in daily traffic count. We were also able to collect traffic accident data from Sedgwick County, again, for this section. You'll see that in 2020, there were 3, 2021, 1, and 2022, 5. Looking farther south of the proposed sand pit operation on Ridge Road between 53rd and 77th, of course, that's a lot longer portion of the road. So that average daily traffic count, again, for 2022 was 4,209. That's the average daily traffic flow. And then you can see, again, the percentage of increase at between 150 and 200 trucks would be between 3.5 and 4.7%. So again, these are not large percentage increases in daily traffic count for this area, whether you're looking at the area between 77th and 85th or between 53rd and 77th, that increase is pretty small. And then again, for traffic accident data, we had 2023 provided to us, and that number is 7. So again, that is our section for traffic. And once I go through this, I'll be more than happy to answer questions as well that the board members may have. For noise and dust, again, in this report and the site plans, you'll see that the applicant is going to build 6 to 8 foot high berms. These berms would be 24 to 32 feet wide and constructed around the entire perimeter. Thank you, Brent. He's pulling up the site plan now. This is, of course, in the staff report. But these berms would, again, be 6 to 8 feet high, 24 to 32 feet wide. And this would be proposed to be built along the entire perimeter of the subject property, these 3 lots. Once these berms are built, there would also be native grasses planted that would grow 3 to 4 feet high as well, and be built on top of the berms themselves. Berms will significantly reduce noise and dust pollution in the surrounding neighborhood. As indicated in Mr. Meyer with Baughman, in his letter, there will be an on-site water truck as well that will be utilized for dust mitigation on the vehicular access route located on the west side of the subject property. It'll be used whenever necessary to prevent dust from leaving the operational site. In terms of noise, Mr. Myers indicated that the sound level of the sand pit and rock crushing operation will remain below 85 decibels as required by the Mine Safety and Health Administration, or MSHA. Did want to provide in my staff report researching this decibel level. According to the United States Center for Disease Control, you'll see some examples of other noise at similar decibels. You have normal conversation or an air conditioner at 60 decibels, a washing machine or a dishwasher at 70, city traffic, what can be heard inside of a car between 80 and 85 decibels, and a gas-powered lawnmower or leaf blower at 80 to 85 decibels. Along with the berm, it should be noted that the original conditional use application submitted to Sedgwick County showed the edge of the sand pit operation as being closer to the property line than what is now being shown on the site plan. The edge of the actual extraction operation has been moved from 100 feet from the property line to 350 feet. This will also help significantly reduce noise and dust pollution in the surrounding neighborhood. I would also note that it has been noted by multiple landowners, property owners surrounding this area, that they have mentioned that this previously has been rejected by the county a few different times. City staff would note that this plan that has been presented to the City of Valley Center is significantly different than the original operation that was recently rejected by the Sedgwick County Planning Commission. Some areas to note that the entire extraction area with this plan is 173 acres. The original plan was 236. Again, the area of operation has been moved farther away from all of the adjacent property lines, has been moved in farther. The berms will be taller and will surround the entire perimeter. And these changes have been noted, and this really is a significantly different plan than what was heard by Sedgwick County earlier this year in 2023. So again, wanted to note that as well.
While you're on that, Ryan, just
Yes.
real quick, while we're looking at this, just to be clear, I want to make sure I'm clear. While we're looking at that 350 feet, at one time, that was 100 feet all the way around.
Yes,
correct?
that is correct.
And the berms that are shown around the entire perimeter, the original plan was just along
Had it along 63rd,
63rd.
and I think maybe one other area, but it was primarily just along 63rd, not the entire perimeter. You're welcome. I would also note that the future plan for once extraction is completed, which is shown in the application as well. Originally, that was just going to be a small section with a number of lots on the west side. What is shown now as the proposed, and of course this is proposed, but the proposed future residential development does encompass that entire 173-acre lake and would provide, of course, along with the wonderful water amenity, provide multiple streets, not just one street, but large lots on either side of this street. As indicated here, 280 lots is what's proposed here. Again, this could look a little different, but there is definitely far more land to work with in terms of future residential development under this plan, as opposed to the previous plan that was submitted to Sedgwick County. So a lot of differences between what was submitted then earlier this year and what we are reviewing tonight.
Hey, Brian, how many years in the future is that expected, or was expected, or estimated?
Phase one, again, what you're seeing here, phase one is 10 to 15 years. Phase two could be potentially another 15 years. So again, it would be up to it really will be dependent, 10 to 15 years, dependent upon demand, how quickly the operation can move forward.
25 years possibly.
Potentially, yes. And even then, I will note that there are some other sand pit operations that have moved from one phase to another. And in that original phase or in those previous phases, developers are moving forward with platting and building homes. So it really would be up to the developer and working with the city on if they would wait until phase two is completed, or if once phase one is done and they have moved their operation to the north, if we would look at potentially starting to build homes at that point. So again, that's up for future discussion, but definitely with this plan, a lot more homes could potentially be built as opposed to the original plan that was submitted earlier this year.
I have one more question then. If you could go back down, Brent. Sorry, while we're looking at this, and I don't mean to be hopping ahead, Ryan.
It's okay.
That operations area, I would assume with phase two, it would move farther north then, right? I mean, it would still be adjacent to Ridge, but that whole operations area just moves north, straight north, more or less? Or does it stay right there the whole time?
It stays there.
Okay.
And so the area of extraction is what's moving. So you have your area of extraction on the south side first, and then phase two moving to the north.
Yeah, sorry, I should have asked that different. But that whole operations area just stays right there. Same point of access throughout the
Correct,
course
yeah.
of
So what you
time,
see here on the
everything.
map right here, yeah, where Brent has the cursor, is the deceleration lane, and then the entrance. That is the only entrance to this operation, is off of Ridge Road. None off of 85th, 77th, or 63rd.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next area of concern that we wanted to highlight this evening is groundwater contamination. Again, as noted in Mr. Meyer's report, the proposed sand pit is estimated to be 35 to 50 feet in depth. Sand pit will be self-contained and no runoff within the site will be allowed to leave the site. If the special use application is approved, permits from the Groundwater Management District, Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and any other agency charged with managing groundwater resources will have to be obtained prior to the commencement of the sand pit operations. During previous discussions, along with written protests received from surrounding property owners, there is a fear that residents' water wells will no longer be viable and residents will lose access to safe drinking water. City staff contacted the Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department and spoke with Kelly Dixon, who serves as the Codes and Floodplain Technician. Mr. Dixon was asked if he was aware of any wells going bad on property adjacent to existing sand pit operations in Sedgwick County due to groundwater contamination. Mr. Dixon's response was that he was unaware of any wells going bad on land adjacent to existing sand pit operations due to groundwater contamination in the county. Lastly, a decline in property values. Another common issue that has been heard during the review of this application is that property values in the surrounding neighborhood will decline if the sand pit is approved. City staff researched other residential properties adjacent to existing sand pit operations in Sedgwick County and found that property values do not increase for residential properties adjacent to sand pits. This report is what you're seeing now. It is at the end of the agenda packet, but it is provided in the packet itself. We looked at a number of properties adjacent to sand pit operations. There is this chart here, as well as a map showing you where these properties are located in Sedgwick County. Each of these properties experienced between 2013 or 2000 2014 through 2023 did experience an increase in the appraised property value. And I would just remind the board and those in the audience that property values are set by Sedgwick County not the city of Valley Center. One other item I did want to mention is it has been noted that there on the city's regulations for the noise, the city does have an existing noise ordinance. And that has been noted that in A1 zone properties, the normal top level during the day is set at 80 decibels. Now, there are exceptions to this, and commercial construction is allowed as an exception to this rule. But again, going back to the berms and other mitigating factors, we believe that these should be below what that limit is. And I would also note that there will be testing done to make sure that these levels are not exceeded as well. That is what I really wanted to highlight. Of course, I want to give everyone in the audience enough time to speak as well. Definitely, these are the top level items that we feel needed to be addressed in the staff report, which we have. I'll stand for any questions, but would recommend opening the public hearing and going from there.
I do have a couple of questions for you.
Yes.
Has Public Works determined on the, when we're talking traffic, increase of traffic and what have you, are we talking, or have they evaluated as far as the weight, increase of weight, not only just increase of traffic, but weight on the roads that will obviously age the roads more, and how much time do we have on those roads before they have to be resurfaced and replaced?
So as those roads are all part of those are under Sedgwick County jurisdiction. Those I could not tell you if those studies have been done by Sedgwick County, but those roads are currently under the jurisdiction of Sedgwick County.
On the well water, is there a possibility or possible intent to do well water sampling of any sort to monitor whether or not there is like a background right now, how it is in the future, to monitor to make sure we do not have groundwater?
And so I will defer to Mr. Meyer on this one, but what I can tell you is that there is a requirement that there be ongoing water testing of the sand pit operation itself. I'm not an expert in that. I would defer to Mr. Meyer, but I do know that if this is approved, and like I said, once the special use application, if it is approved by both you, the Planning and Zoning Board, and City Council, then the applicant would move forward with getting the necessary permits they need from the state. Once that is granted, then there is ongoing water monitoring done by the state of Kansas.
Yeah, because I know that based on that depth, they're going to be hitting water, groundwater.
Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't matter what's on top. You can prevent anything from on top, but underneath it's going to be migrating. So anything that's added to the aqueous bed is going to be. So that's what I was wondering about. The noise, I'm not sure about the dust mitigation because I've done air sampling for the dust mitigations with McConnell and what have you. That is like cat catching its tail. You can put a water truck out there, try to get the dust, and it's going to go airborne. It's going to go airborne. So I'm hanging out on the west. Winds go east, west, north, south, whatever it wants to do. So I don't know how we probably have to revisit that.
Thanks, Rick. Anybody else have any questions for now? Oh.
Ryan, we've talked about a lot of ideas for mitigation and trying to control some of these factors. Are there any ramifications in this plan for if the set levels for these various items are exceeded, or if contamination does occur, what the reparations would be for the citizens living in this area?
Again, with the city's noise ordinance, we do have a fine. So there is a fine in place. That's where we would get. We do have noise monitoring equipment that the police department has. And so if there were violations in terms of the noise, then that would be referring back to our noise ordinance that we do have, and we do have a fine for that. In terms of the groundwater contamination, if we got to that point, I think we would definitely get the state and probably the federal, the EPA involved. What those fines look like, I don't know what that structure is at this time. But obviously, if something catastrophic were to happen, which is a big if, There would be state and federal agencies involved.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ryan, what has anybody looked at what the distribution is going to be in terms of the truck traffic? In other words, how much of the truck traffic may go through Fifth Avenue and Meridian?
I would defer to hold on to that question, and then when the applicant gets up to speak, I know they'll be able to speak.
Because if they're heading for, if we're talking about heading for 135th, that's already starting to get pretty condensed down there.
Yes, no, Paul, I agree. I think that's an excellent question that the applicant who would be doing the actual
Right,
operation
right.
will be able to answer
I
at
just
that
thought
time
maybe you
during
had
the
some
public hearing, but I appreciate
feel for
the
it.
question. Yes, thank you.
I had one more quick question before we open the public hearing and hear from the applicant. Those evaluations of property values adjacent to other sand pits, were any of those other sand pits improved in the way this one is proposed to be, in particular with berm?
No.
Or any type
No,
of
these existing sandpit operations have no berms.
screening at all?
No.
Okay, just curious.
Excellent question.
If there's nothing else, we'll open the public hearing at 7:26. I'd like to hear from the applicant or the agent first, if you so choose. Name and address, please.
Good evening, Phil Meyer with Boffman Company, agent for the applicant. Address is 315 Ellis, Wichita, Kansas, 67212. So with me here tonight, the applicant tonight is Central Sand Company, which is a subsidiary of Fremar Corporation. With me here tonight is Blaine Martin, who is with Central Sand and Fremar. He'll be glad to answer any questions you guys may have. They're a known operator with Central Sand in the area. There we go. Speak in the microphone, Phil. There you go. All right. Make sure everybody can hear me. They did the coves at 53rd and Tyler, which is being developed as a residential development right now. They did what we call Castaways, that is at 45th and Hoover. That's in process right now. They're 70% done with that one. And I'll show you pictures of that one later, but that's one where they're actually building houses in the development and they're not done with the sand operations. There's a joint effort going on there and selling a lot of houses doing that. The next stop for them is going to be 77th and Ridge, we hope. You're going to help kind of decide that tonight as we go through this process. But sand is a commodity, and it's a commodity that is necessary for this south central region of Kansas. It's necessary in the construction business. When you're dealing with a commodity, you have to go where that commodity is located. And through the research they've done, they know this application area before you tonight has the commodity of sand and would be a good location. Second, you're going to see, what I call Sandpit Row, which is 53rd Street from Meridian west to Maze Road, is pretty much filling out. And there's not a lot of sandpit area left along there. I personally think you're going to see the industry go up and down Ridge Road. And you ask, why Ridge Road? Well, it's the one road that has sand located along it, and it's the best shaped road in northwest Sedgwick County for this type of operation. So that's why it's going to happen on Ridge Road, because that Ridge Road is constructed in a manner to handle the traffic. It's set up that way. Great photograph there of just what happened along 53rd Street and all the sand pits. Past that, I'd also, in your mind, if you go think about South Wichita, where the canal route and 235 start, and you drive west along 235 and start heading north, think about all the sand pits that you see that, were sand pits operating at one point in time along that stretch, and how they've all redeveloped. They have one house, they have 3 or 4 houses around them. Many of them have apartment complexes around them. A couple of them along West Street and 235 are recreational areas, but all of those old sand pits have been redeveloped And today, what you see happening on the new ones that are along 53rd Street that are happening, you're seeing residential developments happen in those, actually pumped in a manner to allow the residential development to happen. So that's kind of the direction the industry's going. Groundwater is going to be a topic we're going to discuss a lot about tonight, and you're going to hear about it a lot. It is an important topic. I don't personally take groundwater contamination lightly. It's worth discussing. In 2007, the Kansas Geological Society decided to do a study on groundwater. And the purpose of this really was to see how the runoff from subdivisions affect groundwater. But in that conversation, they started talking about the sand pit operations and what effect that is having on groundwater also. So there's a professional geologist named Donald Whitmore that did this study in 2007. It was the first of supposed to be 2 studies, I believe. This started from Groundwater Management District talking to Sedgwick County and the Planning Department, and then Wichita Area Builders Association got involved, and they all decided that this study would be a good thing just to kind of resolve where this conversation was going as residential developments were occurring around these sand pits. Basically, when that first part of that study got done, my conversation with the geologist that reviewed that was it's not conclusive. I can go into the summary of that study and point out things to you in there that show you that there's no issue with groundwater contamination. Somebody else can pick up the same study and read different paragraphs and go, well, there's the potential for this or that. And that, I'm not going to argue that. There's that. The potentials are always there. But the bottom line at the end of that study, it was shown that inconclusive, whether there's an effect on groundwater pits or not. And I'll get into more details to help explain how what we're going to do is not going to affect the groundwater in these areas. I'll also point out to you today, KDHE has never shut down a present operating or a post operating groundwater pit stating that the water's contaminated, you can't swim in it, you can't fish in it, you can't use it. That hasn't happened, not in Sedgwick County. That hadn't happened in the state of Kansas. So we don't find these groundwater pits being contaminated later after we're done. The question on the groundwater was organic compound concerns were below acceptable standard rates for drinking water. So there was compounds found in the water, but they were all acceptable for drinking water. And you can find those same compounds in any well, whether they're adjacent to a sand pit or not. It had nothing to do with the sand pit on that. What's important, and I'll explain to you as we go through our stuff, we're going to be a self-contained site. So as we go into this sand pit operation, we are going to divert the water that runs across this field today and over to the river, and we're going to take it around the site. So the only water that ends up inside this groundwater after we open it up is from our site and only our site. So the water coming to it from Ridge Road or 85th will be diverted around the site with diversion ditches, and the berm definitely is going to do that. So why are we confident we're not going to contaminate the water? Because we're self-contained. If there's a spill or something on our site, we can deal with that immediately and get it cleaned up. And we've got supervision from state and federal agencies making sure of that. I think I can tell you and make an argument to you that the existing agricultural operation that happens on both of these ownerships with all the fertilizer and nutrients put on that could have more of an effect on the groundwater than we are going to have on it with our sand extraction operation. And those fertilizers and nutrients can affect the organic compounds more than we will. So the other part of that is our sand extraction has to stay 300 feet away from any existing wells. It's a state requirement. And with our revised plan that we're presenting you tonight, we're 350 foot away from property lines. So we're well over the 300 foot away from where any wells might be. So we've met the state standard with what we got. One of the other issues you're going to hear is the rock crusher. The rock crusher is a recycling process that's necessary for our community. So you're going to have trucks that are going to roll into the site with concrete or asphalt in it. They're going to dump that in a pile. They're going to drive around. They're going to load up with sand, and they're going to leave and go back to another. This concrete that gets crushed and this asphalt is used in road bases all over Sedgwick County. Wichita requires it in their road beds. Valley Center required it in the road bed you just did on one of the improvements you did here in town. It's standard with most communities requiring that. So what we're doing is we're recycling that material. That concrete is not ending up in a C&D landfill. We're crushing it. We're putting it underneath the arterial roads that we drive on. It happens to be a great base for roads. So there's a purpose to that. We will show you pictures of how we take care of dust suppressions as we go through this. This rock crusher is going to run 6 to 8 weeks a year. It does not run all the time. So we're going to put 1 to 2 months worth of material stacked up on site. Rock crusher will show up in less than a week. It's crushed all of that and it's stored on site and then shipped off as people need that. So the berms, we are agreeing to do berms completely around the site, 6 to 8 foot tall. We will add native grasses on top of that. We'll get 3 to 4 foot tall. So we're offering a 9 to 12 foot buffer. Those native grasses will do a lot to knock down additional noise. 8 foot berm does a great job. You put the native grasses on top of it, that will help. That'll also help with any dust that may occur going through that. I think Ryan did a great job on time frames. So 10 to 15 years on phase 1, 15 years on phase 2. That is purely driven by economy. So since the recession, phase 1 of the last 10 years, we're in the recession, phase 1 of the last 15 years. I mean, it's kind of what it comes down to. How much sand is the economy using and how much are people buying? Permitting. The Department of Agriculture. So we're going to go through multiple permits. Tonight's the first step. And why are we doing this first? And somebody's going to ask me, why don't you come back and see us after you get your state permit? Well, first thing on the application for the state permit is, are you zoned appropriately for the use you want to do? So this is always the first stop we have to do. We need to get the special use permit before we can go apply for a state permit. We're going to use 3 state permits to get through this. So the DWR will issue us a permit for the operation of the sand extraction operation. DWR is a division of the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture will also issue us a permit for reclamation of the sand pit, and they will require that we post a bond with them, $600 per acre bond that they will hold. And if we default on the sand pit and go away, or if we fail to reclaim it in the manner of which we're required, they're going to use that bond and they're going to go do the reclamation. So there is a mechanism set up with the state to guarantee that everything is put back the way that it's supposed to be put back. KDHE, Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Bureau of Air will issue us a permit on the rock crusher. They will also issue us a permit on the air construction permit that will be necessary with the sand extraction operation. On top of the state agencies that we deal with, we'll also be dealing with the federal government, which is the MSHA, Mine Safety and Health Administration. They issue the mining license for us from a national level. They will require an inspection of the operation before the first truck rolls in. So they're going to have to set the site up, get it ready to go, have MShaw come out, look at it, and then once they get the approval, they'll take off running. After that, they're required to do quarterly reports with MShaw. They're required to do incident reports that happen within a 24 or 48 hour period. And they will have a minimum of 2 site visits per year for MShaw. And then they have the right to just stop by anytime they want, or if they're driving by and see something, they can pull in. So that happens quite a bit. MShaw is the agency that does the noise testing when they show up on site. And to date, Central Sand has always passed that. At a local level, we'll be dealing with Sedgwick County. So I talk about we're going to divert the water around this site. To do that, we're going to be in the street right away to some level and on site, adjacent to the berms, doing some regrading, and Sedgwick County's got to permit all that for us. Any improvements we do to Ridge Road being the turn lane, Sedgwick County will be permitting that. So we're going to be dealing with Sedgwick County, and I'm sure Sedgwick County is also going to include Valley Center in those decisions, making sure both agencies are in agreement with each other. So Brent, if you could, would you go back to my PowerPoint real quick, please? So I'm going to show you some slides of what we're looking to do here. That's the location of our site for the mineral extraction. I want to start with the berms because the berms are critical. And I'm going to end with the berms because the berms are critical in my mind. But you notice the one on the left is next to a subdivision. It's an 8-foot berm with native grasses on top of it, and those are roofs and houses on the other side of that. The one on the right again is a 6 to 8 foot tall berm, undulating berm that's got the native grasses planted on top of it. That's what we expect this to look like when we're done. That is a sand extraction operation occurring as it is. So the base plant, when we set up, is going to stay there. That's the piece of equipment that floats around the lake as it slowly opens up. Next, please. So this is a good example of the water truck, and you had mentioned it's hard to keep the water truck down. What they do is they make sure they water the whole site down at certain times, but they always make sure that the traffic areas are watered down. And that's what you see on the picture on the right is you see a dry area and you see where it's been watered down. Well, that's the traffic flow where the trucks are traveling around. So they keep those watered down to keep the dust in. This is just some pictures of the operation. You can see the recycled material there on the right, just waiting to get crushed on that. When they do that, they do pull out all the rebar and all that stuff, and it gets put in recycle bins and hauled away and gets recycled. So they do separate all that because the specs for the roads don't allow the rebar to stay in the crushed concrete. Next, please. Again, these are the scale operation and just the standard operation. You can tell at this particular site, which is the Castaways, there is no berms out there on site. Next, please. That is the rock crusher in 2 different shots of the rock crusher. The one on the right is it actually operating. Next, please. So I threw this in there, explain to you how this happens. This happens to be the Coves, which is Tyler and 53rd Street. So you notice it starts in 2011, and we're just going to open up 10, 15 acres in the beginning of that. And wherever we set the operation up, it stays there. And then you can see in, 2014, how it's grown a little bit. I just can't read the numbers, so we'll have to talk about the red here one of these days. But you can see that sand pit slowly just keep expanding out, but the main operation stays at its location the whole time. And we just keep opening up 10 to 15 acres at a time as we go through the process. When we are done with the specific area, we'll go in and grass and shore up the bank and go to the next session. So that's always happened in stabilization. You can keep going. Brent, you're doing good. I need to be pushed along. I'm taking too long. So this is our phase 1 operation, and it shows all the revisions we did between the first and the second. I'll go, the first application and this application, which I'll go over in detail with the next one, but it helped me show you, you know, this is where we're starting. This is the first 10 to 15 years. And then Brent, if you do the next one, that is the second 15-year operation. So along Ridge Road and along 85th Street, we had a 200-foot buffer on the original application. Along the east property line and along 77th Street, we had a 1-foot buffer along there. 100. Well, I'm sorry, 100. Thank you. 100 foot. Yeah, 2 zeros. 100 foot. And then we had berms along Ridge Road. We did have berms along Ridge Road on the original, and we had a berm along 63rd Street, just along phase one, adjacent to the houses. What we presented to you today is there's berms all the way around, and we got 350 foot all the way around for our revision, significant revision in that. And it solves a lot of any well issues because we had mentioned earlier, 300 foot's the number. This is a development plan, one that could occur. I can't promise you in 30 years what the industry's doing and what developers are going to do and what your subdivision regulations are going to require, but we always do a development plan showing how it could. So we've got houses either backing up to an 8-foot berm or backing up to an open body of water. Again, we're back to the berm with the houses behind it, which is where I'm going to want Brent to put it back to when we're done. But this is the rock crusher on a very windy day. And you will notice that rock crusher dumping. You can see the wind is affecting what it's doing, but you also see there's not a lot of dust coming off of that thing. See if we can run it for you. So. All right, so you can leave it there. You can take it back onto that beautiful berm. And I'm going to stand for any questions, and I will have Blaine come up and help me answer any questions I can't answer for you.
I've got one question, and then I want to see if you can go back to Paul's and talk about traffic distribution. There had been some concerns about, so you talked a lot about water quality. There had been concerns about impact to water levels, water quantity. Can you talk about how these operations impact water level?
In my opinion, they don't affect the water level. That everything gets, the water that comes out gets put right back into the groundwater. So that thing's not changing 6 inches during the operation of extracting that sand. We're pulling it out, sending the sand on shore, we're putting the water right back in the lake. So that thing's not going up and down. Will go up and down all year long as groundwater does, and it will fluctuate with the rest of the groundwater aquifer going up and down, but our actual operation isn't going to change.
And there'd be some impacts of evaporation like there is with any, but
Yes, and as you go through the permitting process, we've got to go to DWR and change our permits from the agricultural use today to an industrial use. And all those open pit evacuations are calculated in that permit.
thank you. I'm going to ask again. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually got 3 questions for you. I'll start with water diversion in terms of the diversion plan that you have around the bermed area for heavy runoff.
Yes.
In the case of, like say a 50-year event or a 20-year event, is that water going to impact the surrounding neighbors? Is that going onto their property, or how are you? That's just a question to answer.
Great question. No, it's a great question. I have no problem with the question. So in my opinion, I think Valley Center will be involved. We will mainly be working with Sedgwick County and the diversion of that, and we will have to do a drainage plan with Sedgwick County.
Because you'll own that. You'll own that problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
We cannot have a negative effect to the neighborhood.
The next question I have is, I'm trying to, make me understand why we we have to have a recycling asphalt and concrete recycling plant as opposed to just simple sand extraction. I understand that we need sand for the because of the natural resource locations, but to me it would appear that some of the recycling operations can go in different locations. It wouldn't necessarily have to be co-located with this one. I understand there's an economic issue with the sale of product coming off but that was just one question. The last one I have is distribution of the trucks having to, once they're loaded with product, and if they're on what, and that may be a question that we may have to answer later, but I'd like to see an analysis on that. How much of that is going to proceed east? And especially on the case of 85th Street coming through downtown, or our main, one of our main corridors, and where it intersects with Meridian. We have a lot of children crossing the high school and the grade schools and junior high. A lot of walkers that we have in that intersection. So that's a question in terms of, well, there's really two questions. One is the degree of traffic, because there is a signal there, and how that'll back up. And the other one will be what the asphalt and road impact will be on I'll call city streets. I don't know what the weight bearing on those trucks, if they're running 80,000 pounds or 60,000 pounds, or you might illustrate that for us. Those are my questions for now.
So the recycling operation, it makes the logical sense. It's important that we recycle this material and not fill our C&Ds with it. Plus, many communities, including yours, is using that recycling in the construction of the streets. From a tax dollar standpoint, you want that as most economical as possible. And if I've got to send one truck 3 miles down the road to dump it, turn around, drive up here, get the sand, and then go back to the job site, all I'm doing is spending money sending trucks driving around town to different locations where I can do it all at this one.
But the product's not mixed on a truck. You either got recycled crushed product, asphalt recycled, or sand. And they're not mixing them.
Oh yeah, most of those trucks that come in with concrete and asphalt in them will leave with sand in them when they leave and go back to the site. So there is
Okay, that's the
use going on.
economic argument for it.
Yes.
Okay, because
And I'm not saying not just for the operator, it's the economic benefit
Right.
to the community
Well,
for doing that.
yeah, I'm just like talking about what the local or regional impact would be. If we're talking about noise and dust, most of that's going to come from the crusher, not from the sand extraction. Is that correct?
For the traffic, I would tell you, in my opinion, 70% of this traffic's going south down Ridge Road. I mean, is some of it going to go north? Is some of it going to go north 85th and east? Yes. I mean, I would tell you it's not, but most of it's going down south to where the construction is occurring.
Well,
You're doing a new subdivision in Valley Center. Are they going to drive 85th to Meridian to get there? Absolutely.
Well, because we're going to see a lot of growth in the metro area, especially east of us. As that whole area is going to be, we're going to see a lot of development coming into that quadrant. So there's going to be a lot of new construction. There's going to be that's the reason is that the thoroughfare and how those trucks will be running through the city. I know that's a question it's going to happen. But it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to have to be handled.
So today, if we weren't expanding or we weren't completing 53rd Street area with sand operation, you'd see those trucks running up Meridian. They're still running through your town. It's just a different route.
Yeah,
Growth there.
but that's also a question for our city planners.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Blaine, anything you want to add to either of those answers, or am I close enough? Close.
Pretty much hit the nail on the head with that one. Really, the only traffic that's going to be northbound out of this is, I'm going to say the 70% is probably more like 20 to 15% north, and then back to the east. Everything truly is going to go south. And other
And
than
that's,
that, I
and
think
that, we're looking now, we're looking out 15 years now. Okay, in terms of what it is today versus how the city is going to develop and available land for development. We know there's a lot south and west right now, but is that, that's going to be the question in terms of where the market's going to be for this. They're just kind of a long range thing we got to think about.
Now, I would tell you on that one, if you're 15, 20 years down the road, your city's going to have time to plan for that change as it occurs. My answers, when I gave my answer, and I like to be conservative on the 70.
We either plan or restrict.
85, but, mine was short term, and then your city's going to know that growth and change.
Thank you.
So the other thing I will add, and I know I'm talking way too long, we're bringing a master plan in front of you. We're showing you the final plan. We could bring in phase one and go, here's what we want to do. And show up 15 years from now and go, okay, now we want to expand north into phase two. We've been running, things look good, we're in good shape, and we're not doing that. We're just walking in day one telling you, here's what we would like to do. It makes sense for them from a business standpoint. To me, it makes sense for you as a community to see what it is we're doing long term. So we're shooting straight with you from day one.
Thank you, Phil. Any questions?
I got a couple
Go
questions.
ahead, Brian.
You got a couple hundred trucks coming and going a day. What percentage of them you think are bringing materials in?
25%.
25. I misunderstood. I thought you said a majority of them. So 25% of the trucks coming in are bringing material to be processed down the road. It's going to be stockpiled. And then at some point in time, how many trucks do you think you can safely stockpile before you need to bring the rock crusher in?
In this location,
Time will tell.
several months. Because we'll push the material up with a piece of equipment, get it stacked in a pile, and then just not to let everything spill over.
How many full-time employees are you estimating that you're going to hire for this location?
At this location, day in and day out, 6 to 8, not including office.
How many in the office? So 10 people are going to run this, and that'll be the number of employees on site day in and day out for the duration of the project.
Correct.
Gotcha. So you got your 12 to 15 year extraction on phase one, another 12 to 15 year extraction on phase two. Now, I think Ryan mentioned at some point in time, and you did too as well, that it's possible during phase one, if it's coming to an end and you're moving to phase two, that you would start building houses. That has happened before, you said.
It's happening right now at Castaways 45th and Hoover Road.
So, and the rock crushing facility and all that will stay where it's at the entire duration of phase one and phase two.
Yes.
So the houses that were being built would be closest to the rock crushing and processing station 12 to 15 years from now, if they were going to be built at that time.
We'd start on the south and the east side if we did that.
So you'd start in
So-
the southeast corner back there along 60.
Yeah.
63rd.
So if you want to look at that photograph, that's a Google map that Brent has put up there. That is the Castaway site. Up a little bit different in that our sand operation is off of Hoover Road. But you can see we're building homes now, and that photo is year old. There's a lot of houses in there right now. They're actually pontoon boats out running on the south part of that lake while they're in their sand operation on the north part of that lake. But yeah, we've got houses basically being built all the way along those streets.
So if you continue north from there, that's your other facility up top, right?
That's right there is, whoop, no, that's a different operation. So
Let's take a look.
stop right there. Now, cursor to the right a little bit, down and to the right. Right, the oval piece, Brent.
Mm-hmm.
So see the cul-de-sac in the middle? Let's go pan back down. Down, go up. There we go. All right, so along Hoover Road, you see the oval operation that is, there you go. Right, there you go, and it's got the cul-de-sac due west of it. So that is operation that we're showing on our site plan coming off of.
So in the conversations I've had with people in the community, one of the major concerns is, as you've addressed, water, whether it's quantity or quality.
Correct.
Now, you cited as source a study that you, by your own admission, can be read either way, correct?
I'm saying it's inconclusive, yes. And yes,
So you can't sit here with 100% certainty and say that there is not going to be any effect to the water quality or quantity as a result of the sand pit, based on that study.
I can also, yes, I'm going to let you have that one as long as you let me tell you, out of all the sand pits that have operated in Sedgwick County, and Kelly Dixon, I called Kelly Dixon and talked to him when we did the first case submittal. Kelly's worked at MABCD for over 30 years, has been with Sedgwick County, always done the floodplain and nuisance issues. We've not had a sand pit in Sedgwick County that has caused a water quality or quantity issue that we know of today. So let's go over the last 30 years, but let's go 50 or 60. It's not on record that we've done that. So I'm pretty comfortable we're not going to have a negative effect.
One point that the city has brought up in their annexation of the property, as well as working towards this, is that there would be future water rights, or the city might have availability to future water rights. Would either Ryan or Brent want to speak to that so we can understand what that means to the people that are here and how that might benefit the city down the road?
You asked for Brent or
Yeah,
Ryan
if somebody,
to address
Brent,
that.
would you, or
Yeah.
Ryan, would one of you mind addressing the water rights?
Good evening, Plan Commission members. Thanks for spending your evening with us. Brent Clark, of course, a proud city administrator. Yes, there are potential water rights. So if you do look at these three parcels, of course, with the southern one being a single, and then to the north, there's 280s there. There's irrigation well, one on the south property, and then one for the two properties on the north portion of this entire area. So yes, there would be potential water rights. Based upon the calculations and kind of what now the potential sand pit operations has come to, with 173 acres, with evaporation and per acre feet and all those things, of what DWR would potentially allow, would be in approximately that little north of 34 million gallons, annually, could be potentially available if the city worked with the developer to come to some terms of an agreement to potentially have access to those. In kind of breaking it down, because I'm a very simple person, that's about 70 days of water on what we consume currently today. So, if everything went right, we would increase our water supply, which potentially will have a very positive impact on our city as a whole. Of course, water is an extremely valuable resource that is going away quick, and those water rights are going away just as fast as that salt plume is forming too out into the west. So, every bit of water rights that any city can acquire right now, every city across the entire state of Kansas is looking for water rights. And so this would have a positive impact on us as an entire community. Now, one of the positive things too on this is the location. It just happens to be extremely close in proximity to the raw water line that we actually sell Wichita water right now to. And so that line is just barely to the east of the corner there on 85th, on the far northeast corner of this parcel, or the two that are on the north on 85th. And so we would have opportunity actually to not have to put much infrastructure on the ground to have that connection, not only to potentially sell, 34 million plus gallons, but also to potentially use that in our own water treatment plant that we are underway as we speak. The water treatment plant is slated to hopefully start bidding in 2024 and start construction and hopefully operational in 2026, 2027. Right now, of course, we do have enough water in our current wells to handle the capacity that we currently use on average. not during peak demand. And so during peak season, in the summer months and those things, even with the water rights and the wells that we have now today, it will not cover our total supply that we need as a city. And so we will still have to buy some from Wichita. If we were able to get some of these water rights, that will absolutely help in being more self-sufficient and reliant upon our own water resources for the entire city of Valley Center. That's a little synopsis.
Is the approval of this application required for those water rights?
Is it required?
Are the water rights still there if this?
I mean, the water rights
if
are-
this doesn't
yeah,
happen?
Yes, that's something that we can negotiate with the property owners, with the two property owners that are currently there today on those potential water rights. Of course, if you don't have, if you still have crop in the ground and all that stuff, I mean, it needs water. And so I'm not sure if the water rights would necessarily be available to us, just coming from the Nebraska side of, everything's irrigated. That property is worth a lot more than non-irrigated farm ground. So, I don't know for certain. But what I do know that is if this continues to proceed forward, that there's lakes involved in a sand operation, well, you're not farming the ground anymore, so there are water rights available. Sometimes when I've spoke with other communities, when this happens, sometimes those water rights just go away, and no one actually captures them, and they just disappear. So this would be a potential opportunity for us to work with the property owners and the developer, to acquire those in some fashion.
Brent, when we're talking about future case, approximately, if the current plan in front of us moves forward, approximately when would those water rights discussions happen, and when would that become available to the city?
And so, earlier on, when we were discussing with the property owners, that really wasn't a main focus for us. And so, I was under the impression that, it'd be after completion, of the actual extraction and those things. That's just, I'm not sure, on water rights side. But actually with visiting with DWR, you can actually submit an application to have those water rights available during the construction of a sand extraction or a sand pit operation. And then you just amend that every year. You file a new application to potentially increase the amount of water rights that would be available for the city or municipality to potentially pump. So actually it could start, depending upon negotiations, right away.
Thank you.
I just don't know the exact number that would be available right away.
Anything else? If not, so I did open the public hearing, correct, or did I not?
7:26.
Yes.
I thought I
It was
did.
just
I just wanted to make sure.
A little over 3
Right.
minutes was given.
Yeah. All right, at this time, for anybody in the audience who'd like to speak, if you come up one at a time, give us your name and address. We have 3 minutes. I would ask that each person speak one time, so try to please make sure you use the best of your time that you can. One thing I would ask is if you would try not to repeat something that someone else has said. If you want to support what they said, that's fine. But out of respect to everybody's time, not just to hear the exact same thing. So, and Brian, you got it? Whoever's up first.
5 minutes. We have an hour.
Yeah, we previously allowed 3 minutes, and I think it works okay. So we'll stay with 3 minutes.
Hello, Jennifer Lee, 5335 West 81st Street North. I am responsible for the noise pollution document. Oh, sorry. I usually project loud enough. I also made the document that showed where the wells are. I made the document that showed a cross-section of the aquifer and how deep the wells go and how deep a sand pit would go. And then I also made the document with the hazardous materials, wind speeds, and wind speed necessary to make those hazardous materials airborne. I had something I was going to read, but I think I'm going to go through and just answer some of the points that, sorry, I forgot your name. Yeah, Phil made. The noise pollution map, I stated all of the decibel levels that I have listed there came from OSHA and the Federal Highway. What is it? The Federal Highway Administration. I want to note that we are east of the Big Ditch, which is what, a 15 to 20 foot tall berm. And yet I can still hear I can hear International very clearly. I can hear trucks on Ridge Road. So I'm sorry, but a 6 to 8 foot berm is not going to do any good. The other thing is the hazardous materials that can be airborne. The berm's not going to help with that because I'm sure a lot of the piles of the product are going to be taller than 6 to 8 feet. And those can still be picked up by the wind and carried to the surrounding homes. There was a comment about how that this plan that's been proposed is a lot different than what was previously proposed and turned down by the MMPC. This is a sand pit that's almost twice the size of the one that was proposed in 2004 and was denied. So yes, it's a different plan, but it's still the same idea. And I showed this to the city council. I'm a visual person. I'm a visual learner. This is our aquifer. The bowl is our aquifer. The lid is our layers of soil, clay, sand, and that is a natural filter. There was a comment about the fertilizer from the farming of the land. That is filtered by the soil, by the clay, by the sand before it gets down to the aquifer. When you take that lid off and you remove all the soil and the clay and the sand, you're exposing the aquifer to contamination. It's very simple.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next. Thank you. Next.
I'm Gary Lee, obviously not the eye candy of the family here. My lovely wife went first. 5335 West 81st Street North, Valley Center, Kansas. I would like to talk about what a lot of the city council members and some of the staff have really leaned into the future water rights and municipal wells in determining their approval. However, according to the Valley Center water treatment plant, the new treatment plant, which Brent just talked about, is supplied by wells 10, 11, and 12. And that was confirmed by the city previously in the staff meeting and again tonight. So the additional wells that may or may not be available 30 years from now are not factoring into the current plan. And that includes expansion on the east side and north side of Valley Center. It was mentioned earlier that there were no wells contaminated in proximity of current sand pits. What wasn't mentioned is that if there are no houses on wells around these sand pits, then that would be zero. So I in a lot of the developments they showed, those houses are serviced by rural water and city water.
Do you know that for sure? Because if I had to guess, most of the properties that were shown, especially related to property values, I don't think there's any way those people are anything about well water. I'm just curious if you've got other information. That'd be good.
Curious if they have information also.
Good. Well,
Yeah.
it's okay. That's you answered my question. Go ahead.
Okay. The new water treatment plant does not directly state that the water would be extended west of the river to these current homes. The current homes that were proposed, none of those houses can take place until city water or sewer is extended from Valley Center to those. So houses cannot go in out there as they proposed until city water and city sewer are provided. There are, and I asked how much it would cost to extend city water and sewer to that proposed development. And I was told by the city staff that it's estimated at $9.5 million today's cost. So 15 to 30 years from now, that you can expect that to double. I was also told that it was also mentioned at a meeting that when the city does supply water and sewer out there, that cost, the 9.5 million, would be divided potentially be divided among the city of Valley Center and the homeowners out there. There are approximately 300 homes that are out there right now. That would be anywhere from $25,000 or more per home in order to connect to city water. If, and in my opinion, when the groundwater contamination occurred because of sand pit operations, it would render those 200 to 300 homes without any potable water. And the litigation and the time that would take to solve those issues, all of those homes would be without water, all the water, until Valley Center extended water west of the river. There is no rural water coming north that passes the river around the old Wilson Lake International Breakaway area. So right now, there is no rural water, and there is no plan in place to extend water or sewer to that proposed development. So,
If you can wrap things up.
okay, yeah, according to the Wichita Planning Commission, the risk of groundwater contamination was a determining factor in denying the use in the special use permit in 2004. In summary, the approval of the special use permit should not be contingent upon the acquisition of water rights that are not guaranteed. These water rights, this is estimated to be no sooner than 30 years from the beginning of sand pit operations. The risk of groundwater contamination, the cost of supplying water to Valley Center residents and county residents west of the river, and the sufficient supply of current wells should not be factored in to this special use permit. Please take that into consideration. There is no way those houses can be built until city services can be provided.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Denise Spivey. I live at 8050 North 63rd Street West. And I absolutely have loved the PowerPoint pictures. It's made it much more clear as to what we're all talking about. Is there any way you guys could pull up the rock crusher that was a short segment and actually put sound to it? Could you play that? That's enough. I'd like to invite you all to come 300 feet and listen to that 6 to 8 weeks out of the year. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next.
My question was to Mr. Bachman, how many of these sand pits did you say? How many sand pits you talking about? Oh, pressures. After one of them is a lot of pressures.
Yeah, and I might ask if, sorry, just so it will make this easier, if you could direct questions to us, we'll get the right person to answer them. Sorry, just so everybody can hear, especially.
Okay, how many of these sand pits that have these beautiful homes around them now were built with a rock crusher beside them?
And if either one of you want to answer there, I think I heard you say that probably all of them did at one point in time.
So the two that we pointed out to you, Castaways at 45th and Hoover has a rock crusher that is occurring on it, and that's what you just saw the picture running from. And then the Coves that we presented to you at 53rd and Tyler had a rock crusher on it while it was operating. So I cannot speak for the Coves to tell you. They were in the section to the south, but I won't say they were where the sand extraction was occurring. So the rock crushers are, how long have they been? It's been popular the last 15 years, I'm gonna say, maybe 20. Not saying it hadn't lasted longer, but the municipalities have started specking that over the
It's been
last.
30 years since Wichita started using recycled
using it.
material like that for road beds. Yep.
Okay, and my next question is on the drainage. Is the water that's going to be taken off-site going straight down Ridge Road South to the big ditch? Is that how you're going to get rid of that water?
Do you know yet, Phil, you had talked about having to develop a drainage plan that Sedgwick County will have to approve. Is that far enough along to be able to know exactly how that's going to happen yet? Probably not. So I don't think that's known yet. But I can tell you the process that goes through with Sedgwick County and with City of Valley Center is there cannot be an additional runoff from the property more than there is right now. So effectively, they can't just take the water and dump it on somebody else. There are
If you
checks in
have the
place.
berms there, is that not going to keep the water from flowing into the farmer's field right now that he has a problem with and everybody else?
That's part of what the plan will be to develop to make sure that doesn't happen. The county won't let that happen, or the plan just doesn't go forward.
Okay, and then I have one other question. We have lived out there probably, 55, 60 years. And at the time we bought our property, we were told that we give up 30-foot easement for a road, which is what you're calling 63rd Street. But the homeowner or the landowner that is taking the place now was supposed to give up 30 feet of his land to make it a road. Is that going to happen? No, you guys aren't going to give up anything for 63rd Street to be a road?
Well, it's not us. I can't speak to, I don't know, Brian, if you know. I mean, this isn't being replatted.
I'm a little bit taller. And so actually, I was just looking at this today because I was kind of curious myself. And so actually looking at this area on 63rd, and so it is a road, and there's road right of, sorry, I'm trying to find my mouse. There we go. So there is road right of way on those first parcels, but then it dead ends, and there must be an access easement or something for those folks to the north. So there's actually only a right of way right here to the end of this line here on the north, and then further north to that, there must be an access easement or something that's not shown on the county GIS. But so as far as a publicly dedicated road, it's just that first section on 63rd. Now I defer to Phil for anything else, but Fear, I'll let you know from our standpoint, it's actually maintained by the Valley Center Township. So yeah, but not really, but yes.
That's all part of that plan. Right. I can tell you, just because this is the world I work in, with the drainage requirements that are in place and the regulations, that will be a critical part of this, as Phil talked about. There would be a master drainage plan that would have to be approved by Sedgwick County and the city before anything would move forward. And effectively, they can't make anything change the drainage patterns, can't make anything worse than what it is now. That I can't, sorry, those details are not available right now. That's part of what comes along with the plan development. If we have, I've lived, for what it's worth, because I heard this before, I've lived in here for 17 years. I drive that road all the time. I've driven it a dozen times since this issue came up. So I've been out there and I've seen it. Who's next? Ma'am, sorry, you had your time. Who's next?
Evening, John Friend, 3901 Palos Verdes Circle here in Valley Center. Unfortunately, the sand pit has been peddled around to the various governmental entities in Sedgwick County for over 20 years. The entities have either said no or the request has been pulled. And I really urge you to stand up for us residents here that are standing in the way of harm and vote no tonight for this special use permit. There's other locations around for sand pits. Putting this in the middle of a residential area is a bad deal. It makes no sense. Also, there's other measures to obtain water rights. Unfortunately, that should bother everybody here, that the city of Valley Center is willing to throw residents under the bus in order to get these water rights. And this parent arrangement, correct me if I'm wrong, the advocacy for the sand pit in order for access to water rights, that should bother everybody here. And we feel like as residents, we're being sacrificed. Our livelihoods, property values, risk of groundwater contamination, just so Valley Center can get these water rights. Groundwater contamination is very real. The residents and families of the immediate nearby concentrated residential neighborhood, as you know, reside solely on groundwater for sole source of drinking water. In addition to the 300 homes residing within 2 miles of the site, there's within the 2 mile rate, the same 2 mile radius, there's over 307 water wells. That's data through the Kansas Geological Survey. There's 100 of interest within 2 miles here. There's 139 wells within the city limits of Valley Center. Some think that this is only an Allard County issue. This is very much a Valley Center issue. So those of you that live in Valley Center, just be aware there's also groundwater contamination risk within the city of Valley Center. And as been mentioned earlier, this groundwater is also an issue for residential development. So the risk is here. Obviously, the 2007 report from Kansas Geological Survey that Phil referenced had a conclusion here. The overall conclusion is that stormwater runoff containing contaminants can enter the groundwater through the sand pits and impact groundwater quality. So this is a real risk. Yeah, they can say we've got all these protections. This is a 30-year product. This is a 30-year project. The MAPC report, this is from earlier, this is the one that sampled a number of reports, number of sand pits. And they also concluded if the application is approved, it may have detrimental effects on the public health through the ability of contaminants to enter through the sand pit to the groundwater used as the sole source of drinking water for nearby residents. I want to comment on the staff report where the apparently Mr. Dixon from Sedgwick County was surveyed. Yeah, maybe so, but I think there's been some other evidence that may not be all applicable. Some of those being on some of those residents also being on city water. Please remind that the EPA, there's 2 EPA Superfund sites south of here that originated through sand pits. These sand pits, it's hard to say there's been no well contamination given the different nature of the characteristics. The main risk factors.
If you can try to wrap things up in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but this is a complex issue. The risk factors, sand extraction within the groundwater, we've talked about that. This is a long period. It's hard to say there won't be any contamination. High daily in and out of truck traffic. We talked about that. 100 to 250 trucks a day. That's 300 to 400 trips in and out on the roads. Rock crushing outside materials, and then the nature of nearby residents. We talked about that. So again, the risk is here, and we ask you not to put this risk on us residents for the benefit of Valley Center to get their water rights. That's selfish and puts it very detrimental. I have one quick question I want to make on traffic. My wife and I live south of 81st and West Street. West Street's already in horrible shape. I can't imagine with the trucks running around here. We think there's going to be a lot of traffic pickup on 85th Street for job sites north, east, and southeast of Valley Center. I can't believe all of them are going to drive clear down to 53rd Street or north 109th Street for through roads here. But anyway, just to ask you to please consider the risks involved here. Again, there's other locations for sand pits, and there's other means and locations for the obtain water rights for the city. I mean, we all support growth. I'm not against sand pits. This is just a horrible location for the sand pit.
Thank you.
So appreciate your time. Thank you.
Might clarify a question that I asked of the city administrator to make sure everybody heard that. that the water rights are available now. They're not hinging on this project, is what I heard you say, Brett. I want to make sure I got that right. That this project is not what's going to create those water rights. So I just want to make sure that was clear. Who's next?
My name is Glenda Caruth, and I live at 8321 North Ridge Road. We moved here in 1964 because we wanted Valley Center schools, and we liked the feeling of country, the wheat and cornfields across the road from us. Our kids graduated from, and 3 grandkids have graduated from Valley Center schools. I've always believed in shopping local, and we have went to Dr. Daniels and now used NMC at Valley Center. We ate at Betty's, and we buy groceries now at Leaguers, and we bought from the Valley Center Leaguers. We shop at Bartell's. We may not be citizens of Valley Center, but I've always considered Valley Center my hometown. I agree with all the concerns of my neighbors. They are real. One of my concerns is my husband has COPD, and the dust from the sand pit will affect his breathing. Another concern I have is that if you all know anything about our neighborhood, when it rains heavy for several days, we have water drained down on us from behind. It drains down on us. 30 or 40 years ago, the neighbors that we had at the time met at our house with the Sedgwick County Flood Control. And they told us, the man that came out from the Sedgwick County Flood Control told us that we could do nothing to change the natural flow of the water that was coming down on us, that our neighbors could sue us if we deflected water over onto them. If they put a berm across the road from me, that is going to act as a dam, and it will change the natural flow of the water, and it will back the water up on us. We have no way of knowing what kind of rains we will get next year, 10 years from now, 20 or even 50 years that they talk about. You want to talk about the future of Valley Center. I want to talk about the future of these young people that live around this wannabe sand pit. They either have to live there or give up the homes that they love. And he said that it may raise the property value, but who's going to want to buy our property across the road from the sand pit? Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name's Rebecca Spivey. I live at 8050 North 63rd Street West. Just to give you an idea where my house is situated, my property backs up against the big ditch and the field is right in front of my house. So, lots of noise vibrations. Don't think an 8 or 9 foot brim, whatever the heck, 9 to 12 feet is going to help, because noise reverberates. I can't talk today. But back to our house. I am asking you to reject not passing the special use application. As you can see from the past meetings, everybody that lives around the area does not support this application. My question to you all is, why are you considering this? I see that 5 of you live in town and 2 of you live out of town within 3 miles. Does any of the people that live out of town live around 85th Street and Ridge Road? I'm guessing no, because nobody's raising their hand. Okay. Yeah, you say you drive on Ridge Road, but have you gone down 77th Street and 63rd Street?
No, I have, not as much as you, but we're not going to argue it or debate that. I was just answering the question that was asked, nothing more. Yeah, I understand. I know exactly what it does.
So basically, this doesn't affect where any of you live. So, but can you please tell me why you want it to affect where I live? And where my neighbors live. Just imagine for a moment what it'd be like to live in close proximity to one, the noise, dust, and sand blowing everywhere, the potential for water contamination, increased traffic, and drainage issues. I invite each and every one of you to come out here where I live so you can imagine what it's going to be like. And then you can imagine that noise that was playing coming back to where I live or anywhere along that property. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've lived at this address since I was 3 years old. My parents moved out to the country to give my brother and I a good quiet country life. We got that. I went to school in Valley Center. I've graduated from Valley Center. So basically, I've lived here all my life. I hope to build a house out there on the property one day because it's quiet. The neighbors are nice and they help in any way they can. When somebody needs help, I want to live out in the country because it's quiet and you're not stacked up house upon house as you can be in the city. I like being able to look in almost any direction and not see a house next to mine. I like being able to look in my backyard and not being able to see into somebody else's house. My neighbors moved out here with the same ideas. They moved out here also for the peace and quiet, which I've enjoyed almost my whole life. If you move forward with passing the special use application, my plans are being dashed. The risks are substantial. The site is rich in silica sand, which exceptionally raises the chances of respiratory problems, ranging from asthma to the life-threatening condition known as scoliosis. Personally, I bear the burden of SVT, which is supraventricular tachycardia, a heart condition that brings on episodes of an abnormally rapid heartbeat. It leaves me struggling to breathe as if an invisible weight presses upon my chest. Now, the thought of additional healthcare concerns burdens me greatly, and our Kansas City and the ever-present wind will carry the sand and particles far and wide. So how are we guaranteed that grasses are sure going to make it so that the sand particles don't get through it?
Thank you. Next.
Hello, I'm Tyler Cobble. I live at 8846 North Ridge Road. I have a question about the rock crusher and its operation. In the video, we saw that it wasn't very dusty on a windy day, and that's great. I assume that it uses water from the pond on site to help mitigate the dust. Is that correct?
Water is there through the pond opening up. We would get water into a water truck that hooks directly to the crusher where it does the compression system that's on the crusher itself.
Now, once that water is used for the crusher, does it return back to the pit?
That area would still be self-contained up there on the south end.
Okay, so there's no risk then for any of that contaminated water that's had any contaminants off the asphalt or concrete to then migrate back into the exposed water bed?
I can't say that for sure. It just depends where it's located.
So there is a chance then of any gas, oil, diesel fuel, hydraulic oil, anything that's ever been ground into the pavement or the concrete, potentially ending up back in the water pit in the groundwater. I just want to make that clear that that is still a possibility, correct? Okay. Okay, that's what I thought. That's all. That's my only question on that. And then my other, just to be clear, so we've established that the water rights are a go regardless of this operation. Is that correct?
I don't know. Here's what I would say is I can't speak for the city. But my question was, those water rights technically are available now if the city wanted to negotiate with the property owner. That's all I was getting at.
Okay. So now with those water rights, let's say that we get them, we start using them now, the pit is under operation, this all goes through. I did hear earlier that we're discussing selling the water to Wichita and not even consuming all of it ourselves. So this benefit isn't actually potentially that big of a benefit to the residents of Valley Center. If we sell it, it's a moneymaker at that point, right?
Sure. I mean, the revenue's not the worst thing. But, I mean, I assume that's what Brent, I don't want to speak for Brent, but I think that's what he was getting at as far as the revenue of being able to sell that water. I mean, it helps with the tax base.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's all I got. I just want to clear those two up.
Thank you. Next.
I am Penny Simpson. I live at 8355 North Ridge Road. I hope you've had an opportunity to review the materials that were supplied to you earlier. I am strongly opposed to this special use application for the proposed sand pit. The combined effect of the issues presented today result in an overall decline in the desirability of our area, leading to the lowered property values. As outlined in a study commissioned by Richland Township Planning Commission in 2006, Professor Diane Height's research indicates a significant correlation between property distance from a gravel pit and its sale price. Properties next to such operations can experience a 30% loss in sale price. At 1 mile, 14.5%. At 2 miles, 8.9%. At 3 miles, 4.9%. These findings underscore the substantial influence of the gravel pit's proximity on property values. Utilized in the 2023 tax appraisal figures from Sedgwick County Mobile Land Records, the combined value of the 200-plus residential properties within a 1 mile radius of the perimeter of this area is estimated to be in the range of 40 to 45 million. Employing an average reduction rate of 22% to gauge the potential loss in property values for these residents, the projected losses could reach as high as $9 million. In addition, over 300 homes within a 2 mile radius of this site are currently dependent on private wells. No city services are available. The property in question recently applied for conditional use permit from Sedgwick County, with the hearing held on June 8th of 2023. Notably, the county planning staff recommended denial of this request, citing concerns for public health in their findings. Specifically, they highlighted the potential risk of contaminants entering the groundwater through the sand pit, which serves as the primary source of drinking water for nearby residents. As an illustrative example, the cost for Valley Center to extend services to each of these households in the event of pollution from the proposed sand pit is estimated at $25,000 per residence. Compounding this issue, additional housing developments are already planned in the area, adding to the number of private wells. When residents in this area purchased their homes, there was a reasonable expectation that future development would align with the residential character of our community. This current special use application represents a radical departure from this expectation. It is threatening our neighborhood and our personal financial well-being. This request should be denied. I thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Dina Bushell. I live at 8020 North 63rd Street West, Valley Center. And I'm probably the most vocal opponent to this. I have rallied people and I have had a great support group. I'm going to touch on two things very quickly because obviously we're sticking to our 3-minute time frame. Traffic. The concern about traffic goes deeper than just the quantity or the amount of traffic or the quality of traffic that's going to be traveling up and down Ridge Road. Past incidents on Ridge Road have left me profoundly troubled. In April 2022, October 2020, and October 2018, we had deaths from accidents on Ridge Road. This does not include the unreported accidents. It doesn't include the amount of accidents that were involving deer and horses and cattle and slide offs into the ditches because the road is so narrow. And you add in trucks that cannot accelerate as quickly as they should, or may turn in front of someone traveling the road. Those concerns, they can't control. Okay, they just can't. Okay, so one accident is too many. An additional accident, with the amount of traffic that they're talking about, you're talking about at least one additional accident per year based on the projections. Those can't be controlled. The other thing I want to touch on is stormwater. The berms are obviously a concern. I have heard multiple speeches on them. I'm not going to go into a lot of depth. However, Scott Lindenbach, the stormwater manager, says, as you can see, the plan's drainage map, excess runoff diverts through the subject property during major events. To what extent additionally detailed modeling would need to be evaluated? I am concerned that the subject property has not properly evaluated the off-site runoff conditions. This is from Scott Lindenbach. This is not me. It's a statement from him, and I included the email in my packet. There is concern about it, the expense of taking care of this. There was also a statement from Mr. Dixon about the wells had not gone bad that he was aware of. My question is, was Mr. Dixon aware of any sand pit or any wells that were existing prior to sand pits going in for homes? Okay. What was or is the proximity of those wells to sand pits prior to the start of the sand pit? What was or is the proximity of those wells to sand pits while the risk of multiple vehicles, pieces of equipment breaking down, and leaching contaminants into the aquifer are present? We have provided you with information avoiding speculation or rehearsed responses from the applicant. As provided in your staff's report, we believe some pertinent information is included in our responses. We urge you to reject this application and preserve our neighborhood, because that's what you're doing. This is our neighborhood. This isn't some piece of property out in the middle of nowhere. It's our neighborhood. And the signatures of all of these people that you have in your petition are the ones you're going to be affecting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to make sure when Phil, if you have some closing comments, which probably makes sense, we might talk about the stormwater issue a little bit more. I'm not speaking on behalf of that. I'm just talking from my own experience. I don't want to be the one to answer that. Next.
Wayne Iverson, 8355 North Ridge Road. Well, I'm glad you played the sound of the rock crusher. That's cool. It is cool. On the June 8th MAPC staff meeting, they said, should the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission determine that the application be approved, staff recommends that it shall be subject to the following conditions, and the commission shall adopt additional findings to support the recommendations, which is the rock crusher shall be utilized to crush materials, on-site material only. No off-site material shall be allowed to be brought on site. Kind of felt like that was, they were looking out for us, not dragging a bunch of contaminants onto the property. The roads have all kinds of pollution in them, from blown motors, oil, antifreeze, all that stuff, to demolished foundations and stuff that can have asbestos, lead, and mercury in them. I understand they're trying to run a clean operation. I'm not anti-business, but I damn sure don't like the idea of a rock crusher and a landfill across the street. I'm opposed to the sand pit, but I really do not The rock crusher doesn't need to be 8, 10 foot above the water table, does it? Yeah, it'd be better off, it, Fremar's office over on Broadway. Yeah. You guys all seem to be pretty bored listening to everybody get up here and bitch about this.
Not at all. It's what we're here for.
I know. I urge you to reject this special request.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Chris McElkin. I represent most of the folks that have gone up and spoken today. I'm not going to repeat. I'm just have privilege to be able to help these folks work their way through this difficult situation. And I think we all have to realize that at the end of the day, who's going to bear the burden of any negative consequences as a result of your approval of this operation? The folks that have talked to you today. They're not experts. They've done a heck of a job putting together on their own hook information that they believe raises issues and should spur you to look at this very closely and reject the application. They don't have the money to hire someone as good as Mr. Meyer. He's excellent at what he does. And they don't have the ability to do that. So they've done the best you can, and I hope you respect the time and effort that they did, because they're the people that are going to bear the burden. And I think some of us have been involved in, I know Mr. Jensen's job in what he does. We kind of somehow maybe discount and think, yeah, I understand, but I know better because I have experience. And I think what that leads us in looking at our staff report, they get the benefit of the doubt. It seems to me that throughout this process, the owner of this property or the applicant has gotten the benefit of the doubt. And I think it should be the other way around, primarily because I may be wrong. I'm wrong a lot, but in my research, I can't find a situation where we have a fairly densely residential area with between 300 or more homes, all on wells, private wells, within a 1.5 to 2 mile radius. And when you get down to half-mile radius, I believe the numbers are 90. Okay, this is a situation where you're being asked to to approve dropping in a sand pit operation. I think the total acreage is 300. I think tonight we found it, the operational would be 175, 180, something like that. It's still a huge operation dropped in the middle of an existing residential area, all of which is dependent upon private wells. I haven't found one where that's been done before. You're in I think you're in fairly uncharted territory in this one. This isn't a situation where you had some residential grew around the existing pit. You're just parachuting this operation in on these folks, and that drives their concerns. And again, they're the ones that are going to bear the negative consequences, because everything that's been said tonight, it's not going to come true. It's not going to come true. Mr. Wilson, you had a very good point. How are we going to protect these folks from the negative consequences? And that's always a problem in municipal planning, and I'll tie it up and get off the podium. I liken this to some of the work I do where people come in and actually do the residential developments, and they ask the community to, hey, we want to do a bond issue. We want to do a bond issue. This is all going to be great. We want to do a bond issue, float the specials. And you know what they have to do? They have to put up a letter of credit or bond to protect the community in the event it goes south. That's not going to be done. This gentleman isn't going to put up a bond to protect against all of these negative consequences if it goes south. So again, these folks aren't going to be there when it goes south. They don't live there. They're absentee. Nothing wrong with that, but let's look at how we review this. These folks can't go anywhere, and they're the one that's going to be left with the time, effort, in expense when some of these things don't come true. And we know that that is always going to be best case, best intentions. It's not all going to become true. These assurances are not going to protect these folks. They're going to be left. We're probably not going to be here maybe at that time. There's not going to be any financial support. We're going to depend upon the EPA or the government. That's pretty hollow. That's pretty hollow. That being the case, all the benefit of the doubt should be resolved in favor of my folks. And this is just a bad idea from a planning standpoint, to drop this type of from scratch into a developed area of this density. And again, for that, I urge you to deny the application. The applicant can go elsewhere. There's other areas.
You can wrap things up.
You sure, Mr. Jansen? I said I was going to. I do
You're
appreciate
fine.
your patience. Last point. The one thing I do have some familiarity with is the land valuations. Number one, tax valuations are irrelevant. Number two, apples and oranges on many of these properties. And if we go in front of the city council, I'll have a study on that, because I've already looked at some of these. And I'm not saying it's misfeasance or malfeasance. It's pretty hard to draw some conclusions on cherry picking this. But we know the general consensus is it's not going to help the property values for these folks. So thank you for your patience, Mr. Jensen. Thank you for your patience. You guys got a hard job to do. But again, I urge you to give my clients and these people the benefit of the doubt and protect their interests.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Bay Edison, 7325 West, 77th Street North. Well, this isn't in my front yard, like it is in Miss Tina's instance. There are school buses that run Ridge Road between 6 and 9 every morning, picking kids up, and from 3 to 4, 3 to 5 every evening, bringing them back home. First, 4 bus routes versus 150 trucks. That's not something that needs to happen, because the brakes will fail on a truck, on a car, whatever, and causing accidents. The 3 accidents per year, I agree, has nothing to do with the unreported ones. Bobby slid into the ditch, so Dad come and got it with the tractor. That's not reported more times than not, unless there's an injury. All I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'm Bill Plucker. My address is 241 Valley Creek Drive. If you plot that out, you'll find that I'm probably about 1.5 miles from this property that we're talking about. However, I drive down 85th Street and turn and go south on Ridge Road about 20 times a week. A lot of times. So I know Ridge Road pretty well. I agree with some of the other comments that have been made here. This is very, very dangerous. You're talking about increasing the truck traffic by over 100%. That's a lot. So I would urge some common sense. We're going to tear up Ridge Road. We're going to tear up 85th Street really quick. So I want to change from going to Ridge Road, because we talked about that before, and go to 85th Street, what was mentioned previously. If these trucks come down 85th Street is going to get torn up really quick. When we get into town, we're going to have big trucks that are full of 60 or 80,000 pounds of weight going down Main Street and trying to turn right, get to Meridian. That's a very, very tight turn. I don't think these trucks can do it well without getting into the turning lane that goes north. So I would urge you to think about that, along with the danger from kids walking around, riding their bicycles and that kind of thing. So that's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Brett?
I just want to, there's a few comments on the truck traffic. I just want to make sure you all know there are truck routes inside of Valley Center that trucks do have to follow. Otherwise they're subject to a citation. So that's actually on Ash. And so if they come down Main Street, that would be then directed to Ash, which is a terrible road too. I'm not saying Ash is a good street by any means, but there's a truck route because of, the Main Street corridor, on Main Street with the business district, and also with that really tight corner that PC put in there on Meridian and Main, which is terrible. So just want to make sure that everybody knows there is actually a truck route. I can't find it on our website, which I'm shocked. So I'll work on that here early next week.
Thank you. Anyone else? Would the applicant or agent like to say a few words to wrap this up here, and we'll close the public hearing?
Thank you. I'll try to be brief, then I will, Blaine and I will answer any questions you have. So change is difficult. Change is always difficult. I understand the concerns of the neighbors. I don't take their concerns lightly. As we go through this, Mr. McLagan did a great presentation to you. But in that, he's saying, please don't leave these problems, these negative effects on these neighbors. What are the problems? What are the negative effects? If there were going to be problems, if there were problems with the present sand pits, and I'm going to use the sand pits on 53rd Street, say over the last 30 years, I bet they've been there 50, but I don't want to exaggerate. So over the last 30 years, if there was issues with groundwater contamination, and I can guarantee you there's wells around those, if there's issues with drainage, if there was issues going on with traffic, I would be up here defending how this sand pit is going to be different than the issues they're pointing out to you about the others. Those issues aren't there. They're potential issues or they're concerns that they have that haven't played out with the other sand pits. And I need to point that out to you. Groundwater, all the water wells to the north and to the west are up gradient of the groundwater and really aren't an issue. So what do you concern yourself with? The wells to the east and to the south. State requires that we have 300 foot of separation between our open water pit and their wells to protect them. They use that distance, saying that any contamination would filter out through the sand as it went over towards that well. We've got 350 foot left on our property before we get to that well. And then if that well is another 50 foot off or 100 foot off or whatever it is, additional protection for them. So we're meeting state requirements with that. Drainage is a serious issue. And I understand that. We work with Scott Lindeback all the time. I know the concerns he's speaking about when we do that. Why haven't we gone out and done a drainage plan on this yet? Because that's going to be an expense to go through that drainage plan and run all the calculations and prove that this can work and how we're going to make it work for Scott to approve it. We're not going to go through that exercise if we don't have the land use. So you always start with land use, no different than a subdivision. Then you go through the platting or the development process, and that's when we'll address and look at that drainage. And yes, it's going to be tricky. I'm not going to tell you it's not, but we can figure it out. And you've got Sedgwick County approving that, and I'm sure they're going to have Valley Center involved in the approval also. Traffic, minimal, personal opinion, minimal impact. 150, 200 trucks sounds like a giant amount on there. You spread that out over the day. Configuration of Ridge Road is minimal impact, and Ryan showed you that with the percent of increases from 3 to 5% increase. So negative effects, again, all those negative effects we're creating are hypothetical. I think the gentleman had a great question with the rock crusher. In one, that area where the rock crusher sits going to get compacted down a lot. Two, it's going, if there is any contamination on that concrete, which I'm not going to say is not going to happen, I don't know, but it's going to have that sand filtration. And if that was an issue, we would have conditions today where those existing sand pits had water plumes. in this study that was done in '07, they picked 6 different water wells around, or sand pits around this county. Bunch of them up along 53rd, but they had some down south along 235. They kind of spread them out and looked at them. And again, I'm telling you, that study was inconclusive. So there was no negative effect in the water, and that still met drinking requirements by state and federal. So with that, I'll shut up and answer any questions you have, which will make the neighbors happy for me to shut up.
Questions? Can you talk, just to hit highlights a little bit more, just to make sure we understand on the state level permits that are required for this operation and the things that happen there with water quality, Bureau of Air as far as dust control. You'd hit on a few of those, and I want to make sure we heard or understood what if there's additional protections in place as a condition of those permits.
There is a bond required with the Department of Agricultural for the reclamation of the sand pit. That is putting everything back to place. So it's $600 an acre for the sand pit we open up. So on phase 1, I'm trying to remember my acreage. I apologize for that. 72 acres on phase 1, $600 an acre. We're going to post a bond on that. That will be held by them until we're complete with the project and can release the bond. So there is a financial vested interest with Central Sand with the state that they have to put up. Then they go through regular. So MSHA is going to come do testing on this site and inspections twice a year. What do they do if they're in violation? We'll cease operation. We'll give them 72 hours or whatever to get it fixed, and they're not going to operate till they get it fixed. So there's measures in place. They've not had that today, but you're going, well, what do they do if they show up and something's wrong? Well, they tell you to quit operation and they shut you down. That's what happens. That's what Valley Center does if you're in violation, depending on the level of violation, but they'll just shut the operation down until it's fixed. So if they're not operating correctly, which they can't afford to get shut down for 2 days, let alone a week to fix a problem, they've followed the rules to date and will continue.
Thank you.
Today.
Any other questions?
I actually had a question probably for Ryan. What does the process look like moving forward? We've been through the process so far of annexation and rezoning, and now we're looking at a special use permit. But I know there's been some concerns about how things continue to move forward. Should we approve tonight? What does the process look like moving forward?
Excellent question. So you have 3 options on the table this evening. You can either approve, deny, or table this special use application. Those are your 3 options.
And I might clarify, Ryan.
Yes.
Not that it necessarily ties together, but with the table, if we wanted, we could ask for additional information. Is that correct?
Yes, that'd be part of tabling it with conditions X, Y, and Z. Or
I just wanted to be clear.
if you want additional research, yes, that is an option. As shown on the agenda packet, you have 3 options before you: approve, deny, or table. And if you do decide to table, I would definitely recommend. Yes, we have a set of parameters that will, or questions, something that will be answered and resolved and presented at the next Planning and Zoning Board meeting. So that is an option. If you approve or deny it, whether or not, because it's a special use application, it still goes before City Council. And so what happens after, if you go with one of those 2 options, it will be reviewed by City Council at their next meeting, which is on January 2nd. And that'll be presented with a special use ordinance. So much like this is very similar to the rezoning process. With a rezoning ordinance, it goes before City Council for approval with 2 readings. This would be a special use ordinance that would list the subject property, allowing them potentially for the sand pit operation. And then that first reading would be held on January 2nd.
Thank you, Ryan. That was almost as much for public record or for public
Yeah.
statement as for myself. How about platting this with the storm or with like drainage water questions and things still needing to be defined? Is there another round of information that we will review in terms of
So,
that?
yeah, so the drainage plan would just be reviewed, as Phil stated, to be reviewed by Sedgwick County staff, by Valley Center staff. A drainage plan does not go through the same process as platting. Where platting would be involved is when we get to the point where the developer is ready to start building homes, putting in the streets, the infrastructure. At that time, we would then go through the platting process to create those lots as was shown in the proposed subdivision plan for post-use of this property as a sand pit. What would happen is we would go through the preliminary and then the final platting process, which would go through this board and city council as well.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
And just so we're clear too, is it safe to say that the city council, I think I'm going to state the obvious here, can take whatever action they want regardless of our action, right?
Correct, yes. And so let's say we'll just go through all the scenarios. So whether or not you approve or deny it, it goes to city council on January 2nd. City council has 4 options on what they do with it. They can approve the first reading, deny the first reading, table the first reading, or send it back to you as the planning and zoning board for further consideration. So those are the options before city council. It was noted that there's been a signed written petition. That signed written petition, and give me just a second. I'm going to quote this is from the city zoning code. So this is city code 17.11.04. So when after a decision is made by you as the planning and zoning board, when this goes before city council for approval, if there is a written petition, which we've received one, however, the dates have to be after it can be submitted 14 days after the date of the conclusion of the public hearing by this planning and zoning board. So if the property owners do want to file a written petition against this based on the decision that is made tonight, they will have 14 days starting tomorrow, December 22nd, 2023, to submit that to the city clerk. If the parameters of that requirement are met, then city council would have to approve the special use ordinance by a vote of three-fourths vote of all members of city council. So they do have some extra stipulations that do not apply to you as the city's planning and zoning board.
Ryan, I think there's probably a question on the petition right behind you, real quick.
Disagree. Kansas statutes annotated 19-2960.
And I don't want to necessarily butt in, but I just want to make it clear that the petition doesn't apply to our action tonight.
It
But
does.
okay, then I
Sure it
stand.
does.
Then you go ahead.
Okay. Let me find. This statute pertains to rezoning or conditional uses, which you are. Special use is the same thing as a conditional use. Then I disagree.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Phil. Well, at 9:13, we'll close the public hearing. So I don't think I'd done that in terms of discussion. Any questions? Comments? Anybody care to make a motion?
This member, I think, would like to make a motion to table just till the next meeting to get a few more questions answered. But the body then can make that decision.
Well, I guess I would ask.
I'm
what,
making a
No,
comment.
It's fine. I would like to hear what you would like to have addressed specifically, because if we're going to table it, we're going to need to provide specific questions.
That's true. I think that on the drainage thing, let me just make a couple of comments. On the drainage thing, I think that the process will probably, in my experience over a lot of years, will probably end up being better. With the analysis done with computers and runoff, that probably the applicant will have to come up with a drainage plan that may even improve some of the property owners' runoff. So that's not an issue for me. The issue for me is that if we've got, I'd just like to get a little better understanding about truck traffic and the truck route, and make sure we don't end up with heavy trucks. And that's probably my key issue. And I could be talked out of that.
Any other thoughts?
That's
Well,
it.
As I also had mentioned earlier about traffic, the weight of traffic, the weight of vehicles and what have you on our roads, and it had been mentioned earlier that it was a county consideration, but now I understand the city, possibly our city roads could also be impacted. We need to have some kind of an identified way to understand whether our city roads would be impacted by this, whether or not they can take that capacity of weight repetitively over time, a short period of time in this case, with that kind of weight over the projected routes that they're anticipating. Because I think that's something we need to definitely take into consideration. I am curious about the routes that were the mention about 25% going north, west, going south. Getting a better idea, understanding of where the route is projected to be, that these vehicles will be taking, and current marked speeds, what our road conditions are right now, what improvements would be needed in order to meet better safety conditions than what's there now. Because I know that where they are right now, I don't think we'd have a good chance on trucks traveling at a high speed, 50 miles per hour, so constantly up and down those roads without any issues. We have issues, big issues. Pretty familiar with that side of it.
Did you either? And I might ask either one of you if you have the option if you want to make a motion.
Recommend motion based on city staff recommendations. Public comments and discussion about the planning and zoning board. Rick Schellenmacher, make motion to table SU-2023-01.
Then you want to make it specific to that, just so we're clear. I think what I heard you say is for evaluation of traffic routing studies, impacts to streets, whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Actually, it would be, well, I don't know. Can we actually ask the county?
No.
No, we cannot ask.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
We don't.
So.
Binding to the county.
All right. Go ahead, Ryan.
I would, Rick, just to your point, would remind them that while we do have the truck routes, there are truck routes obviously designated for the county as well. Those routes are designated because those roads are designed to handle that heavier weight. So again, that has been considered with the existing truck routes within the city of Valley Center for those roads that can handle a higher weight as opposed to, say, a residential street.
And that is true. But if I remember correctly, that's based on projection of truck traffic at when it was designed.
Well,
if it's if it increases by, let's say, 25% or so, it will be worse. More outing, less time. The life expectancy will increase obviously. So those streets are already.
Well, Ryan, can you alleviate the concerns about how the truck route will handle that? If we're coming from the sand pit east, what that route's going to look like? What is it?
Like
where is
Brent
it?
had alluded to, we do not have those maps readily available to show the
Could you
board
kind of
tonight.
describe it?
Personally, Paul, I cannot.
Okay.
I cannot. I don't know if Brent, if you can speak to that, or if someone from the police department's here. I cannot speak to the city's existing truck routes, but I can tell you I know that there are signs. So for example, I know 5th Street, obviously that's a truck route.
Wait, which street's a truck route?
Go ahead.
Just for point of clarification, I can't remember, was there a second on that motion before we have
We
discussion?
haven't gotten to a second yet.
So I'm not sure if you can
We're having a
discuss
little
it now.
discussion.
I think they were having a little bit further discussion. So let's go. There's a motion on the floor to table this item for request for additional information related to truck routes and impact to the local roads, the city roads.
That's pretty well said.
Is there a second?
Nope. Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to table. There is a second. Paul just seconded it. Sorry, Paul just seconded it.
Just
to table the item so we can get some additional information on related to traffic.
So I'm ready for discussion now, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
And so those truck routes, of course, like I mentioned before, is on Ash. And so I just brought up the map here real quick. And so it's on Main and then Ash to 85th Street and then 85th Street, outer 5th Street, depending upon, when you're inside city limits versus outside city limits. So the actual route is, when you're coming, from the east, you're supposed to travel down 5th Street from Meridian, then to Ash, head south, and then west out of town, just like if you're coming from west, heading east, same way, and then you head north on Ash. And then once you get to Meridian, you can either turn south and go down Meridian, or you can continue east or north. Of course, with our Meridian project that is set to begin here in a couple weeks, that'll be an all concrete road. So it'll be substantially upgraded from what we have now and be rated for truck traffic. Whenever you have federal funds and KDOT funds in those projects, that's rated for heavy truck traffic. Now, as far as the weight limit goes, if there are weight restrictions, just like there is on the bridge by my house on Seneca and by Fiddler's Creek, that is posted. Those roads are posted with weight restrictions on them currently today. When you ask, and if you do decide to table it for this, I'd ask for clarification because there's no direction. I'm not sure if we're supposed to have the city engineer come up with a cost estimate and scope to evaluate all of our roads and give them gradings to evaluate. So we just need to be more specific. Otherwise, consultants, no offense, would love to have that open-ended statement.
Well, no, I think from this member, we're not talking about, I'm just talking about it, handling this coming from the west over to 135.
Yes, and that's defined by the truck route, which is.
And that's the clarification that I think we were sort of missing in the package.
Right.
About how that's going to get handled. And, and again, we're going to go back to those little kids that are coming from the schools and it's just kind of gets congested there. The buses are running, it's all there. So I've just been asking the city to say, yes, here's our plan to handle that because because again, the northeast quadrant of this area is going to start to develop, and that those products are going to head that way, not just south.
And those steps have already in place. They've been in place for years. There's crosswalks in those high traffic areas for children crossing.
Oh, I
schools,
know.
With LED push buttons. The one on 5th Street, actually its own dedicated crosswalk by Abilene. The same goes for the one heading north on Meridian by 7th, as well as south when you're going to Abilene on 3rd Street. So those are in place.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I'm not arguing that at all.
Nope, I just
Basically,
answered.
then the truck routes that is anticipated right now should be able to handle the traffic.
Yes. Yes.
If I feel assured of that, I would withdraw my second.
Just here to answer any questions you might have.
That's the
So I need to clarify, and I want to make sure I follow the right. Is your motion still in place?
So Rick needs to formally withdraw his motion, and then Paul withdraws his second.
Right, what do I say? Formally withdraw?
You withdraw your motion, yes, withdraw the motion to table.
And then I withdraw my second on the issue, but that's why, why we wanted to understand that, because I see that little intersection all the time, and those little kids, and they don't always push the button, and they're little, and so we just want to make sure that we don't end up with a problem that we didn't anticipate.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make a motion? I thank you for everybody for being here tonight, and sorry we've closed the public hearing. I know this is not ideal. I think that this is my opinion. I think the applicants have done a lot to help address issues. Nothing's ever guaranteed, but I think especially where this came from, if you look back in time, I don't know anything about 2004, but even from the Planning Commission earlier. And I think there's been, in my opinion, there's been quite a bit done to address concerns. The good comments about traffic. I think I was, for what it's worth, I was on Hoover just the other day around 11 o'clock going to our water treatment plant. And there's a fair amount of trucks coming in and out of the sand pit operations there, but it seemed to be working okay. There was other residential traffic. One of the things I think that you might see at times is the presence of bigger vehicles like this moving slower actually can provide a little bit of traffic calming. There's some areas in Wichita. There's some areas in Wichita it's done that. It's absolutely done that, and we've seen. I'm not. You can't guarantee that everywhere, but I think the way the plan has evolved, I don't see a reason, in my opinion, that I'm going to support this, because I don't see how we, based on what the applicant has brought forward, that I should, at least for my vote, I can't speak for the others, should stop this from moving forward to the city council. So having said that, based on city staff recommendations, public comments, and discussions by the planning zone and zoning board, I make a motion to approve SU 2023-01. A motion, a second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
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 That was all three of you? Let's do this by a raise of hands. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-3. Okay, thank you all again for being here. I would remind you that this will be in front of the city council on January 2nd, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
I knew it was Harry, but I just wanted to know about city council.
I should. And I appreciate you guys asking the questions that you did.
Well, we just, there's some prep that wasn't done.
Okay, Ryan, old unfinished business, probably just have the 2024 calendar.
Yes, just one item of new business. As we do every year, I have put in the agenda packet the proposed 2024 meeting schedule. So again, the board will continue to meet on the fourth Tuesday of the month, with the exception of December. Due to the Christmas holiday, we'll meet a little earlier on December 19th, 2024. Just need a motion to approve this, and then we will add these dates at the new year to the city's calendar.
Motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the calendar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
The only item I would have is just to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a happy 2024. Again, thank you for your service to this board and to the community. I personally really appreciate the time that you take out of your schedules to review the agenda packets, to ask questions, to show up and attend the meetings, to listen to the various reports that are given. So thanks to each one of you for your service on the board. On behalf of city staff, city council, it's very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, and I would say the same. Thank you all. I know it's not the ideal situation sometimes, but Merry Christmas.
Well,
to you
that's
too.
it always is.
That's why we ended the year on a positive.
We have to have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Real quick, Mr. Chairman, point of order, just because I want to make sure, clarification purposes. Now, on that withdrawing the tabled to begin with, there was a motion and a second
Right.
that accepted that, but I don't believe you did a vote to formally withdraw that
Oh, that's
table.
true.
So I want to
That's true.
make sure before we go, because I don't want to come back for procedural issues and deal with something, so this is, of course, probably go down to litigation. So actually, always looking out for potential litigation. So
we'll take a step back. There was a motion to table, a second to table. Both of those were formally withdrawn.
yep. And then you just have to vote on the withdrawing the.
So all those in favor of it being withdrawn?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, bro.
Sorry, I just want to make sure
No,
before
you're
we
fine.
adjourn
You're
from
fine.
the same meeting and then have to do a special meeting and reconvene. And so we have it in the minutes and then you proceeded forward with the rest of the agenda. So just wanted to make sure since our city attorney, Mr. Arbuckle, couldn't join us, just want to make sure that was clear. So thank
Okay.
you.
Motion to adjourn? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.